We're going to get started today with today's presentation. Thank you for joining today on a beautiful Friday afternoon here in the Boston area. Today's presentation is Walking Health is Paramount in Parkinson's Disease, and the speaker is Dr. Terry Ellis. Dr. Terry Ellis is a board-certified clinical specialist in neurologic physical therapy. She's the director of the Center for Rehabilitation at Boston University. She's also the director of the APDA National Rehabilitation Resource Center. She's also the APDA Scientific Advisory Board member. Today's subject will be that Dr. Ellis will discuss the research revealing the benefits of engaging in a walking program, as well as approaches to improve walking ability. And so I'd like to welcome Dr. Terry Ellis to today's presentation. We won't be taking questions during the presentation. If you do have a question, please put it in the chat box that's located down below, or the Q&A box. We're going to reserve a little bit of time at the very end for Q&A. And without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Dr. Ellis. Thank you very much, Dr. Ellis, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you having me here today. I'm thrilled to be here and have the opportunity to talk to you all about exercise and walking and the importance of physical therapy. I am going to share my screen here so I can pull up my talk. Okay.
And I was shocked. I just kept looking in the mirror. Let's see what's changed here.
Stop share. Hang on. I just gotta get this back on the first page here. Here we go.
And
Oops.
I don't know, there was a...
Oh, all right. I'll just do it the old-fashioned way here. Okay. All right, so here we go. Can everybody see that okay? Is that okay, Bill?
Yes.
Great. All right, well, thank you everybody for tuning in. And I know it's a beautiful day, and it's great timing because I'm going to talk about walking today. And this weather is very conducive to walking. So I just want to start out by thanking my incredible team here. Many of you may have been with us here and received physical therapy services here at the Center for Neurorehab at BU, and you might know Tim Nordahl or Nick Wendell or Teresa Baker, or, and we have a whole bunch of, physical therapy students in training that are active in our center. So we have a lot of fun here. We have a lot of expertise, and we hope to see you all. So what do we do? Well, we're a unique center in that we specialize in the care of people with Parkinson's disease. And we are a group of physical therapists and movement scientists, and we focus on reducing disability and improving mobility in people with Parkinson's. And we do this through the discovery and application of innovative evidence-based rehab services. And in much of our research, we leverage advances in technology and digital health to try to meet people where they are in their homes, in their community, where the real living happens. So we're very, we're very invested in helping people with Parkinson's live their best life. And so in our center, we do three things. We provide physical therapy services that are covered by insurance. We do research. We have a lot of exercise studies that people can get involved in. And as Bill was saying, we're the APDA National Rehab Resource Center. So we provide a lot of education and sort of outreach activities. And we even have an exercise helpline where people can call with their questions. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the key elements of exercise, and we're going to focus mostly on walking. And then we're going to focus on strategies to stick with exercise, because we know that people want to be exercising, but it's not always easy to do it and do it continuously. And we're going to talk about research opportunities, particularly those opportunities that help people improve their walking. And we'll talk about how to get involved. And so One of the things I want to stress today is the research opportunities that we have are just amazing opportunities, and we really value our partnership with you. We learn, a lot of our research is designed around what we've learned from people living with Parkinson's disease. So we have some great studies going on now that a lot of the ideas we have and a lot of the things we're doing in these studies have been influenced heavily by people with Parkinson's who have given us lots of great advice. So I think people are generally aware of some of the different kinds of exercise that's important for people with Parkinson's disease. For example, aerobic exercise, or exercise that makes your heart beat faster, or you get a little bit sweaty and out of breath with that kind of exercise. That could be things like walking either in the community or on a treadmill, or cycling, for example, a stationary cycle. And generally, it's recommended that people do this about 3 to 5 days a week for about a half an hour. I'm going to skip down toward the bottom of this slide where we talk about strength training is another, with weights, so resistance training is another important aspect of exercise. And generally, it's recommended that people do this 2 to 3 times a week. And then also balance training. It's important in Parkinson's disease to carry out balance exercises to improve postural control and balance. And this is also recommended 2 to 3 days a week. But in red here, what I'm going to focus on today is what we call task-specific training. So it's really important in Parkinson's disease to actually practice certain aspects of mobility, most importantly, walking. So that's where we're going to spend our time today. And in general, it's recommended that people with Parkinson's, and frankly, everybody, walk about 3 to 5 days a week for about half an hour. So why is walking something we want to focus on so much? Well, mostly because it's important to people with Parkinson's disease. There was a study done several years ago that asked people with Parkinson's disease, out of all the different sort of domains, what do you care about most in terms of order of importance related to treatment? What do you want from your treatment? And that study showed that walking was the #1 thing that people were sort of concerned about and wanted to optimize and wanted a treatment for, and then you can see the list of other things that went down the line. So we learned from people with Parkinson's disease about the importance of walking. So I think, many of you are familiar with all of the different sort of cardinal signs or the clinical features of Parkinson's disease in terms of resting tremor, rigidity, bradykinesia, and the balance issues. And most of these, the first 3 anyway, are treated relatively well, with medications. However, what we want to talk about is some of the other things that don't get as much sort of attention. And what we as physical therapists focus a lot on is movement problems, the ability to get around and general mobility. And in Parkinson's, what we see is what we call a loss of automaticity, or a loss of automatic movement. So this is movement that happens sort of just naturally or automatically without thinking about it. So those of you that have Parkinson's might notice that if I really focus on a movement or pay attention to it, I can do it better. I can walk better. But it gets taxing. It's very taxing to put a lot of energy into thinking about moving, standing up from a chair or moving in bed or walking. It takes a lot of effort. And what we see with walking or gait, due to this sort of lack of automaticity, we see things like a reduced arm swing. Arms don't swing as much as they did before, or a shorter step length. We also see more variability between one step and the next. And then, this sort of results in a slower walking speed. So people talk about difficulty keeping up with other people, or noticing a sort of a gradual slowing of walking over time. And then, also people talk about it's hard to do, more than one thing at a time. It's hard to do a dual task, for example. And then, you know, in terms of symmetry, you know, people notice that, you know, can notice that there's, you know, there's a difference between one side of the body and the other related to walking. Might be more stiffness on one side than the other. So what do we know about treatment to improve walking? You know, what is done about walking? And, you know, the main treatment for Parkinson's is medication. And, you know, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with Sinemet, you know, which is the sort of one of the main medicines that people take for Parkinson's disease. And the medicines can be very effective in treating those cardinal signs, the stiffness, the tremor, the slowness associated with Parkinson's disease. However, the medicine isn't as good in you know, improving walking. So in this figure right here, what we see is these are all the different aspects of walking and postural control or balance. You can break down walking and balance into lots of different parts. And what this graph is showing here is that there are some parts of walking that improve, this is improvement over to the right side, that improve with Parkinson's medications. But these ones in here don't really improve very much with Parkinson's medicines. And in fact, these aspects of walking and balance can even get a little worse with medication. And so the bottom line here is that the medications can help some aspects of walking, like the slowness, for example, but they don't help all of the areas of walking, like the timing and like the balance and the variability in the walking doesn't really improve with medicines. So we need something else. You know, what else can be done, you know, to help with walking? Well, some of the other things we've done in our center to try to, you know, to try to understand the problem of walking is we have studied people in their physical activity and the amount of that they walk sort of over a period of time. And what this table shows is what we've learned is that on average, people with Parkinson's disease tend to reduce their amount of walking by about 10 to 12% or so a year. And then we've also noticed that the walking gets slower. And the walking gets slower by quite a bit. In this particular study, we found a 40% reduction in gait speed over the course of a year. So the thing to keep in mind here, though, is that people were taking their Parkinson's medicines during this study. So the Parkinson's medicines were actually increasing slightly, and the Parkinson's symptoms of the slowness, the stiffness, the tremor were getting better or holding steady. But still the walking was getting a little bit worse. So that brought to our attention the need to really focus on walking. Here we see, this was a study done in the UK. And what we see here is that people without Parkinson's disease, in this study, they tended to take about 7,800, you know, so almost 8,000 steps a day, you know, which is, you know, pretty active. But people with Parkinson's disease were only taking about 5,500 steps per day. So that's a lot less. You know, that's a lot less, suggesting that people with Parkinson's aren't doing as much walking as people without Parkinson's. And you can even see here, this number in the bottom is 6,300. This is just in people with early Parkinson's. So what this study was showing us is that even in the early stages, there was a reduction of walking. And so we have studied this further in a recent study of almost 100 people with Parkinson's disease. We measured the walking that was done. We put a monitor on people's ankles and we had them walk, you know, just in their every day-to-day life. And we measured sort of the intensity of walking, you know, how much walking and how intense was it. And what we see here is these numbers on the bottom here. What this means is that, you know, this is sort of minutes on the y-axis going up and down here. This is how many minutes. And this is the number of steps. So for example, this is people who took more than 100 steps in a minute And this here is considered moderate intensity. And so we think that the intensity of the steps has to be about a moderate intensity for there to be a benefit of walking. But what we found in people with Parkinson's disease was way down here. Most people were walking only like, between 1 and 40 steps in a minute, which is very slow. It's either very slow walking or sort of walking that's like stop and go, puttering around in the house, walking very short distances before resting or sitting. And so this helped us understand that, people with Parkinson's disease aren't walking enough and aren't walking fast enough. So what are we going to do about it? What does the research show? And the good news is there are ways to improve walking. There are ways to improve the amount of walking and the speed of walking. So there are quite a few studies that have looked at the benefits of treadmill exercise. So walking on a treadmill for people with Parkinson's disease. And there are many, many studies that have shown that when people with Parkinson's disease walk on a treadmill, it helps with faster walking and bigger steps. So it overcomes the tendency to take small steps, and it helps with overall gait speed. Now, this is probably because the belt on the treadmill is moving underneath you, right? And so in order to stay on the treadmill, the walking has to be fast enough and the steps long enough, to be able to do it in a comfortable, successful way. So for some people who can walk on a treadmill safely, this can be a good option. So there was also, there was a study done sort of in the last couple years looking at walking on a treadmill and walking at either a moderate intensity sort of rate or a high intensity rate. And so what does that mean? So in this study, there was 126 people with early Parkinson's. They weren't taking medicines yet. They were sort of early in the disease phase. And in the moderate intensity group, they worked at a moderate rate. So the heart rate was about 60 to 65% max, which means that you're sort of sweating and working a little bit hard, but not vigorous. The high intensity is sort of more vigorous, working very hard, 80 to 85% heart rate max. And they did this 4 days a week. Both groups did it 4 days a week. And they measured, okay, after 6 months, what was the difference? And so you can see on this figure, this group, okay, so this group was usual care. This is a group that just had medicines only and no exercise. This group did moderate exercise here, and this group did the high intensity vigorous exercise. And this over here is the amount of change in the Parkinson's symptoms. And what this study showed, and this line in here is sort of the middle of the group. And the people who didn't exercise at all, the further up here means sort of worse Parkinson's symptoms. So they had a decline of about 3 points on the scale. So a decline in their Parkinson's symptoms over a 6-month period. The moderate intensity group had a less of a decline, and the high intensity group had the least amount of decline. The only difference was, the only sort of important statistically significant difference was between the high intensity and the medication only group. So it showed that here, the moderate and high intensity group had benefits. There were benefits there. And the question is, what is best? Is high intensity better than moderate intensity walking, or does it matter? We don't know the answer to that yet, which is why now we're doing this big study that's being done all over the United States and even in Canada. There's 29 different states. And we, at Boston University, Boston Medical Center, and BU are working together, and we are carrying out, we're one of the sites that are carrying this out. And in this study, we're comparing a high intensity walking on the treadmill to a moderate intensity walking on the treadmill to try to understand if they're both the same. Do they have equal benefit, or is one better than the other? We don't know. Now, so this particular study we are enrolling now, but this particular study is just for people that are newly diagnosed with Parkinson's, people that are not yet taking any Parkinson's medications. But if that's you and you're interested in finding out more, I have the information here. You can call Mike Stevenson, who's our study coordinator. You can either call him at this number here, 617-638-7747, or you can email him at the email below if you want to learn more about this study. So a lot of people ask me, well, if aerobic exercise is important, does it matter how it's done? In other words, do you have to walk? Does it have to be on a treadmill? Can you do cycling? Is there any difference? And so there was a study that was just published in the Netherlands that looked at cycling, for example. And they actually, they had 130 people with Parkinson's in the relatively early phases. And they had it was like moderate to high intensity cycling on a stationary bike at home. And they compared that to a sort of a low level stretching exercise group. And they found similar results to the study I just showed you that was done on a treadmill. So what we're understanding now is that the mode of aerobic exercise doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't, you're going to get the same sort of aerobic benefits, whether you cycle or walk on a treadmill or even walk outside, which I'll show you in a minute. But there are some other differences. So the good news is that if you can choose something you like, and you can choose something that you're most likely to stick to, because that's really an important element. But so for people that have trouble, that can't walk on a treadmill or have trouble walking, cycling can be a good option, because it's safe and it doesn't require as much balance control. And for people who have freezing of gait, cycling is also might be a better option. However, for people who can safely either walk outside or walk on a treadmill, walking can be very, very effective in not only improving aerobic capacity and improving Parkinson's symptoms, but also it improves walking ability because you're practicing the task of walking. Whereas in cycling, the walking doesn't improve because, you're basically sitting and doing the cycle. So there are some things to think about when you're trying to decide, sort of what is the best exercise, for me. But this is where a physical therapist can be really, really helpful. Going to see a physical therapist who specializes in Parkinson's, that they can really help you sort of get on an exercise program that's tailored to your needs. So another thing that people ask me a lot is, well, do you have to walk on a treadmill? Can you walk outside? And you can walk outside. This was a study that was just recently published in the last year, looking at brisk walking and some exercises compared to a control group that did just arm exercises. And they did this over 6 months. They did it an hour to an hour and a half, 3 days a week over 6 months at about a moderate intensity, so brisk walking. And at the end of 6 months, they saw improved motor symptoms, walking ability, and balance only in the group that did the brisk walking and the balance exercises, and not in the group that just did the arm exercises. So this is more and more evidence that walking programs, people with Parkinson's who engage in walking programs, have a substantial benefit. And the benefits are improved walking ability, the quality of walking, the quantity of walking, the speed of walking, all improves. So that data that I showed you at the beginning about the declines in walking that people with Parkinson's have experienced, that is modifiable. We can do something about that. That's something that we can change the trajectory. We can influence walking in a positive way. So in thinking about walking or exercising, what we know is that the walking has to be at least moderate intensity to have the most benefit. So what does that mean? Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 means very, very light activity, like sitting on the couch watching TV. And 10 is like max effort, completely out of breath, unable to talk, really, really vigorous exercise. So we know that walking and other forms of exercise should be at least about a 5 in this moderate activity range. So that means when you're walking, you should be breathing a little bit heavy. You can hold a short conversation somewhat comfortably, but it becomes sort of a little bit more challenging to have a long conversation. And that's, somewhere around a 5. So that's what you want to be thinking about when you're out there walking. So we now, at this point, I think, I've shared the research with you showing that, people with Parkinson's tend to walk less and walk more slowly than people without Parkinson's, but that the research shows that by targeting walking and walking as a form of exercise, that walking can improve. So what's the problem then? Well, even now people know that, and I've just provided that information for you, it's still difficult. Things can get in the way. It's hard to exercise consistently, almost every day of the week, for example, and so we've done some studies and we've worked with people with Parkinson's to try to understand, well, what gets in the way? And then we've learned things like some people lack the confidence to do it, and some people aren't sure exactly what to do or how to do it. Some people aren't sure how much benefit they're really going to get, from an exercise program. Others talk about, well, I'm busy, it's hard to fit it in. Some people feel unsteady, or there's a fear of falling. And other people, have issues with depression or anxiety or sort of a lack of motivation. And those things, can get in the way. So what do we do about those things? So this is what I want to share with you, an exciting study that is well underway. It is called Walking Health is Paramount in Parkinson's Disease. So we call it WHIP-PD. This is a study that's being done here at Boston University and Boston Medical Center, as well as in Washington University in St. Louis. And so far, we have enrolled over 100 people in the study. And we are looking to enroll about 50 more. And let me tell you a little bit more about what this study is about. So in this study, people work with a physical therapist to engage in an exercise program. And that exercise program mainly consists of walking, but it also consists of some strengthening and balance exercises. So we have 2 groups. People are randomized into one of 2 groups here, but everybody who's in the study gets the exercise program. Everybody gets the same exercise program. The walking, the exercise, the strengthening and balance exercise, everybody gets that. But some people get it where the exercises are delivered using sort of photos and instructions, the traditional way that people are given an exercise program. And some people, receive the exercise program using a mobile health technology, an app on an iPad or a phone, for example. So and what we do is we work with people over the course of a year to help them engage in the exercise program focused on improving walking over the course of a year. All right, so let's get into it a little bit more. What is the exercise program? Well, what we have people doing is we have them walking at a moderate intensity in the community. So that can be someplace near your home. It can be at a local track. It could be in the mall. It could be wherever it is that you're most comfortable walking. So part of it is walking for about a half an hour, 3 to 5 days a week. So we're trying to get people to walk more intensely, to walk at a sort of a brisker pace, to get those moderate intensity steps in a way that is good quality walking. So we work with a physical therapist to optimize the walking. Then we also give people some strengthening exercises that are done at home. And these are done with no equipment, no special equipment, no cost. And we make them very easily accessible to people so that they can be done sort of at any place at any time. Very, very accessible. And so what happens here is that people in the study work with Teresa Baker, who's the coach. She's our physical therapist who helps coach people. And so people come in, there's an initial session where people come in and we do sort of a battery of walking and balance tests. And then there are about 6 to 8 visits with Teresa Baker, who's the physical therapist providing the coaching. And the best part is that Teresa gets to know each individual and works really closely with each individual to develop the exercise program and help people stick to it. And one of the big benefits of this study is that you can meet with the physical therapist in a place that's convenient to you. So some people come into our center at Boston University. Sometimes Teresa goes to people's homes, or sometimes the visit is done via telemedicine, on the computer, for example. So we make it very convenient for people to minimize the amount of travel and sort of inconvenience. So, like I said earlier, some people on their phones or their iPads or whatever it is, and if people don't have a smartphone or an iPad, we give them one. And we deliver the exercise program by uploading videos and instructions through an app, through an application on the phone or the tablet. And then other people get the exercises printed out, like you can see below here, in a picture with instructions. And so we're trying to understand sort of, what is the difference between these two methods. But the good thing is that everybody gets the same exercise program, no matter how it's delivered. So everybody has the opportunity to benefit from the program. So some of the things we actually focused on to help people engage in the program successfully is we talk about what is really meaningful to each person. What is the real goal? Why is it that it's, people want to engage in exercise or should engage in exercise? What do people value in life? And we talk about things like, keeping people moving and keeping people engaged in, continuing to work if they want to work, or travel, or play with grandchildren, or engage in other community activities that are important to them. So this is a very individualized approach. And what we do is we help people with setting goals, and we set very specific goals, and we develop an action plan. So some of you might have had experience setting goals like, I'm going to start exercising next week. Well, that is a pretty broad, not generally specific enough goal, because it's easy just to not ever really get to it. And so we help people really develop an action plan. Who are you going to walk with? Right? What are you going to do? You're going to walk for 30 minutes at a certain pace. When are you going to do it? So we plan this out. What part of the day sort of works best for you? When do your medications work the best? Specifically, where are you going to do the walking? Where are you going to do the exercise program? Really planning it out, because this action plan really helps people stick to the plan much better than kind of a wishy-washy plan. We help people make it very specific. And then the goal is to try to make exercise a habit. So how do we build exercise into people's everyday lives? Like when you get up in the morning and you brush your teeth, for example. Well, you don't think about brushing your teeth, right? You just do it. It's part of your automatic routine. And when you don't have to make a decision about it and you just do it, it's a lot easier to do. And that's what we try to do with exercise. How do we take that decision-making out of it? How do we make it easier? How do we make it part of your everyday routine? And that's one of the things we work with people in the course of the study. And the goal is that this helps people be successful, right? We're hoping that, by instituting the exercises that are just right for you, and putting in all the support of Teresa and the physical therapist, and really coaching people and helping them to succeed so that they develop a sort of long-term habits where exercise is integrated, into their everyday life. And this is Tim Norton here. He's another one of our physical therapists. He's here on the left. And a few times in the course of a year, this study goes on for a year because we want to help people really stick to it and make exercise part of their everyday lives. The visits to Teresa only happen within the first 3 to 6 months or so. And they're all spread out. And again, Teresa can come to people's homes or meet people on telemedicine. And Tim does the same. Tim does the assessments where he measures people's walking, and he measures the signs and symptoms of Parkinson's disease. He measures those at the beginning and sort of midway in the study, and then at the end. So we can tell if how much better people got, and what are the gains people made, and how do we understand the benefits. And we can contribute to the body of research that's really, really needed to help people with Parkinson's optimize their walking. And so hopefully that helps to give you a better idea. Here's a gentleman that has participated in some of our pilot work that we did a couple of years ago using some of the components that I just talked about in this study. He's a little soft-spoken, but listen carefully and he'll talk about his experience. Oops, let's try that again.
Well, I think there was a rewards program built into this for me because I like, as we said initially, meeting my goals with the people who were training me, the physical therapists here. And then dealing with the issue of having folks who had seen me 2 years before, and folks that had seen me maybe 6 months before, and they said, what are you doing? There's something different about you. What is different? And I actually got that feedback from a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I was shocked. I just kept looking in the mirror. Let's see what's changed here. And I don't know. There was a bit of an extra zip in my step or something. But
Yeah.
All right. So some of you might be thinking, well, who's eligible to join the study? Would I be a good fit for the study? And so the criteria are pretty broad. So people have to have a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease and be able to walk without any assistance from another person for at least 10 continuous minutes. And so this study is really great for people who are either, for a whole bunch of different reasons. If you're trying to begin a new exercise program, or you want to learn how to stick to the exercise program better, or in general, you just want to you're already exercising, but you want to become more active, or you specifically want to focus on improving your walking. For all of these reasons, you could be a really great fit, to participate in the study. So again, I just wanted to highlight that, for those of you that are thinking about, well, where would I go, or how does this happen? The physical therapy visits, like I said, they can take place here at the Center for Neurorehab at BU, or in your home. Teresa can come to your home, or you can have a telehealth visit to receive the treatment that's part of the study. So if you are interested in participating, you can call Jamie Gurnis, who's our research coordinator. So she can be reached at 617-358-6157. I'll say it one more time, 617-358-6157. Or you can email Jamie at whippd@bu.edu. That's whippd@bu.edu. So that's all I have for today. I want to thank you for the opportunity to join you today and to provide this information. And I would love to hear more from you and take any questions that you might have.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Just a few questions, and if you have any additional questions, please put those in the Q&A button or in the chat button. One of the questions that we have is that there are a lot of components related to exercise, duration, frequency, and intensity. And as it relates to Parkinson's disease, which one do you believe to be the most important of those?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. It's a great question. And it really depends on the person and their individual circumstances. So I think we all know that Parkinson's is so variable. No two people are the same. And so the kind of exercise that might be most beneficial to one person might be different for somebody else. I think that, so what do you do about that? Well, we always recommend going to see a physical therapist that has expertise in Parkinson's, and we're happy to do that at the Center for Neurorehab if people are interested in that, or we can help you find somebody in your area. And really to get an assessment by a physical therapist who can then help develop a very specific exercise program to help meet your needs. That being said, when you look at all the different kinds of exercises that are recommended, it can seem overwhelming. There's so much to do, and how do you fit all this in? And one of the things we do is try to combine things. For example, brisk walking outside, well, that is both practicing walking and aerobic exercise. So you're kind of checking off two boxes with one form of exercise. The exercises that we prescribe in the study actually help with strengthening and balance training at the same time. So sometimes you can have specific exercises that check off more than one box, and that helps you sort of be more efficient about carrying out the program.
Good, thank you, Dr. Ellis. One other question is, there seems to be a lot of information out there with pacing or metronomes and things of that nature. What's your recommendation as it relates to that?
Yeah, sometimes I think one of the things that I talked about with the treadmill is the treadmill helps, it can be like a pacer. And people with Parkinson's disease have a tendency to walk slow, and the walking gets slower and slower over time. So having some sort of pacer, and for the treadmill, it's like a moving belt underneath you that forces you to keep a certain pace. But if you walk outside, sometimes a metronome or music can be very beneficial. Actually, our team just did a webinar for the APDA that's posted on the, I think it's going to be posted on the APDA Mass Chapter website too, how to use a metronome in music to help with walking. That is an excellent strategy. And so what people can do is sort of count the number of steps that they take in a minute. So some people might take 80 or 90 or 100 or even 110 steps in a minute. And then you can use a metronome or music set at that beat. So you can set it at 100 or 90 or 110, whatever it is that matches your beat, and walk to that beat. And it helps you maintain a more consistent pace and prevents like slowing down. You can even increase the metronome or music slightly to help you walk a little bit faster. So that's a great strategy as well.
Good, thank you. A lot of people have been homebound in the course of the pandemic. And what would be your suggestions, for individuals that have been in that situation that are now getting out of their, homebound situation and starting to exercise?
Yeah, what a great question. One of the reasons I'm doing the webinar today is I timed it perfectly with the spring weather. And so, now that the weather is breaking, it's a great time to start moving and start getting outside and doing more. And walking is one of the best things to start with. And what I would encourage people to do is start just a little bit at a time, working your way up gradually, so starting with even 5 minutes can, if you haven't been doing much, starting with, can I just walk for 5 minutes continuously outside? And then if that's easy, you can do the next time, you can do a little bit more. Sometimes you can even chunk it. So you can do 5 minutes or 10 minutes in the morning, and then again later in the afternoon, on a beautiful day like this, that would be great. But part of what we do in the study that I shared with you is we incrementally, gradually increase the amount of activity and exercise people do in a very systematic way to help them. We're seeing a lot of people like, okay, we've been cooped up with this pandemic, and we, especially coming out off the winter, and now is the time to engage. So I guess I would say, go slow, gradually increase, take your time. And then if you want a sort of more dedicated, a very focused, tailored program to help you achieve those goals, call us and we can tell you more about the study and whether you fit, whether it's a good fit.
Great. I have another question, which is there any difference or recommendation between shorter bouts of activity or a longer bout of activity? So multiple shorter bouts versus one singular longer bout.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it seems that they seem to be equivalent. We don't have any data to suggest necessarily that one is better than the other. Like if the recommendation, for example, is 30 minutes of walking in a day, moderate intensity walking, that can be done 30 minutes all at once, or it can be done 10-minute bouts 3 times. And the thing that seems to be important is the intensity. And so making sure that walking or that exercise is at least moderate intensity. So a little bit brisk, a little bit of sweating, on that 1 to 10 scale, about a 5, can really help people make sure they stay in the zone.
Good, thank you. What tests are you using to measure walking improvement?
Oh, great question. So we have some sophisticated monitors that we use and that we ask people to wear on their ankle. We put these monitors on their ankle and we have them wear it all the time for a week. And that monitor gives us a lot of information about all kinds of aspects of walking. Sort of the amount of walking, the number of bouts of walking, the intensity of walking, how many steps in a given minute, throughout a time period. So we're sort of diving into the nuances of walking to understand at the beginning of the study, how is a person doing with walking on all those metrics, and then what happens in the middle of the study and at the end of the study. So we can specifically look at particular elements of walking. We also do a whole bunch of other tests in the clinic. We do something called the 6-minute walk test. We look to see how fast people are walking, how much distance they can cover in a 6-minute period of time. We also do balance testing. We think that walking helps improve balance, and we want to be able to examine that. And then we ask people, we have a bunch of surveys and questionnaires. We ask about things like mood, for example, and does the exercise program help with depression and anxiety and sleep and things like that.
Good, thank you. One last question, Dr. Ellis. I live outside the Boston area. Can I participate only by telemedicine sessions? Also, did you say this study is only for folks not taking medications?
No. So the WIT-PD study, everybody's taking medications. So there's no restrictions about medications for WIT-PD. The earlier study I talked about, the SPARKS trial, that one is on the treadmill, and that one is for people not taking medicines. And then so right now, the people that are in our WIT-PD study are from all over Massachusetts and New England. And so people that live outside of Boston, just give us a call. We're happy to work with you and figure out the best way to do it. We can do telemedicine. We can come out to you, depending on where you live. Sometimes we've met at a track, a track around a school in a certain area. So we're very creative to try to meet people where they're at and, decrease the burden associated with traveling and getting into Boston.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ellis. Just a few last points. As I said in the chat box, this presentation is recorded. Our plan is that we will get it on our YouTube page and it will be distributed to everybody that either registered or participated in today's presentation. I want to thank Dr. Ellis for doing a great job in presenting the content. Thank you very much for everything you've done today and for APDA over the years. I want to remind everybody that APDA of Massachusetts has a very important event planned for May 22nd. And today we spoke a lot about walking, and it's our annual Optimism Walk. Right now it's looking as though it's going to be a very large event. It's tracking very similar to the last time we were in person in Framingham, where we had over 1,000 people. There'll be plenty of fun, great sense of community. We'll have a lot of partners and practitioners there. Terry Ellis's team from the National Rehabilitation Resource Center will be there in force. We'd love to invite everybody to that event. Share it with the community. It's going to be a very important APDA and PD community event. Again, May 22nd, Bowditch Field. If you need information, go to our website. I want to again thank Dr. Ellis for doing a great job today with today's presentation. And I hope everybody has a wonderful Friday afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Bill.